Biden is a warmer person than Obama was, just on a personal level. I mean, one of his specialties is being friends with everybody. That was really not one of Obama's specialties. And the other side of it, of course, is Biden knows Netanyahu for a long, long time. On the other hand, he has enough reasons to be upset with Netanyahu. Remember the fact that Netanyahu came to America during the election campaign and didn't pick up the phone and call Biden, which is very normal, actually, when someone like Netanyahu comes to America during election campaign, he makes sure he even meets with the other person. He didn't do that. And of course, there are other cases. Of course, I think.
Why didn't he do that? Do you think
he had all his eggs in with the Trump basket? There's no question about it. In my opinion, if we have to look at all the good and bad that Prime Minister Netanyahu has done for Israel over the last 11 plus years, and that he's been Prime Minister, I think one of the things on the negative side of that scale will be the fact that he put too many eggs in the Republican basket. He too identified Israel with the Republicans, and he lost a little bit of the bipartisan support that exists in the United States. Biden represents the Democrats, obviously. He's the old school Democrats, the Democrats that are committed to Israel. We have more to be worried about some of the younger Democrats that don't remember the days, shall we say. But I think Biden has enough reasons to be upset at Netanyahu. Remember when Biden came here as vice president, we announced building a Jerusalem in East Jerusalem just at that particular moment. So Biden is a little bit skeptical. One of the things that we have going for us, or Netanyahu is going for us, is the fact that Biden really isn't someone to keep enemies. He forgets, he forgives.
We saw that with Kamala Harris, right, who attacked him very strongly in the primaries, and then he took her on as the vice president.
Absolutely, he forgives. A good Christian in that sense, that he forgives, and that works very much in our favor in this case. Look, we're also in the middle of an election campaign. I'm sure Biden is well aware of that, and I'm sure Biden would prefer if somebody other than Netanyahu became the next prime minister, as most American presidents have wished for the last 10 years. So, except for Trump, probably. But so on all those bases, he had to balance the two. I mean, look, it was the first Middle East leader he called. Let's also keep in mind the fact that Biden has two really big things on his agenda. Number one, domestic. And sometimes you can talk about that, but Biden really has a lot to do right now in terms of domestically passing the relief package, and of course talking about infrastructure and other things. Plus he has to repair all the relations with Europe that Trump managed to destroy. Europe and also America's Asian allies. So Biden has an awful lot on his plate. The Middle East is not all that important to him in that sense.
But there is one issue that is very important in the Middle East and also is important for Biden, which is the Iranian nuclear deal. And here there is a larger question, not just of the personal relationship between Netanyahu and Biden. Did Netanyahu call Biden when he went to the U.S.? Did Biden call Netanyahu and all of that? But also perhaps a difference in ideology, a difference in tactics, and how to deal with Iran, whether to engage in that deal or change the deal or not. And that could also lead to friction.
Well, absolutely. There's no question that Trump left the deal because Netanyahu pushed him. Now, if you look at the situation today, it's clear that both Israel and the United States are in a worse place. So the question is, what's the alternative? I'm not sure what Netanyahu would like Biden to find a way of improving the deal tremendously. Biden, on the other hand, may be willing to just get back into the deal because having some deal is better than no deal. It's a real.
Depends who you ask. If you ask Netanyahu, then you say no.
But the question is this: I mean, what's the alternative? I mean, unless the United States is willing to use military force to force the Iranians to stop.
Well, the alternative that was attempted, at least by President Trump, was through sanctions to bring Iran to its knees.
But it hasn't worked. No sanctions have ever worked except on South Africa. In the history of sanctions, going back 100 years, the only time sanctions ever worked was South Africa, and that's a complicated case that it's really hard to compare. Sanctions didn't work against Cuba for 60 years. Sanctions didn't work against the Soviet Union.
But it did curb Iran's activities outside the nuclear sphere.
To some extent. But not, look, they're in Syria. Look, we're bombing something every day or claim to be bombing something in Syria on a regular basis. It seems to be Iranian, so I'm not sure how much it curbed them. The Houthis seem very active. I'm not sure what it curbed them. We think about it curbed them, but did it really curb them? In the meantime, they've extended their nuclear program. Listen, it's no easy answer here. One of the problems we have is that we assume that the other party is going to agree to whatever we want. But in negotiations, that just doesn't happen.
Well,